What's up, everybody? I know I'm late, had to take care of an emergency. Hopefully, I'll be able to start this in a matter of minutes. Oh, man. One of them crazy fucking nights, I tell you. Tell you. Hopefully, we got a couple of people watching. Hopefully, everybody's doing well. I know, been late, been late. Supposed to start this a minute and a half ago, but you know how that goes. Shit happens, especially real life shit. Let me know what you're doing if you're in the chat. How y'all doing today? We're going to talk about a little bit of the law enforcement and its antithesis, especially when it comes to black law enforcement and black communities. What's up, everybody? Welcome. Hopefully, you can tell me what's going on with y'all. Give me a few minutes to set up some stuff. All right. What's up, Chaos? What's
Hey,
up?
you didn't tell me what this animation I'm seeing with the guy punching the star. My phone's working. Okay, everything's working.
Testing. How you
Press
doing,
1.
Chaos? Say something, Chaos. I can't hear you.
Okay, what's up? You hear me?
Now you sound crystal clear.
Okay.
I had to deal with an emergency for everybody wondering when I was late, but we're here. Testing.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole thing, I had everything written down, had everything typed. We were going to take an expert for the Gray Faulkner Initiative.
You sound mobile.
What about now?
Sound better.
I said I had everything typed up, going to do an expert from the Gray Faulkner Initiative talking about policing. Sometimes you just have some crazy things you cannot even think of. But what's the first lesson of a good soldier? You adapt and you drive on.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get into it a little bit. We're going to get a little bit of music in there, a little bit of jazz and pizzazz.
Mm-hmm.
Had to go get something to eat and something to drink too. So yes.
All right, well, as you play the music, give you some time. I'll mute myself.
Oh, okay, appreciate it.
You're not playing the music, Charles?
No, I thought you were playing it. Oh, my bad. No, I'm
no,
away from it.
not me.
If you got any music you can play, please.
Actually, yes, I could play some music. Let me find not the theme song, but some other smooth music, man. The one you gave me before.
Okay.
That won't get you a strike, or not a strike, but like a what do you call it, copyright thing. I'm trying to remember the name of the song again. Let me check my. No, I think I deleted off my. No, actually, it's on my Facebook. Cause you send me from Facebook, right? The YouTube song. Let me go scroll back up there now and find it. Be 1 second, people. As y'all wait, come in the building, like the stream, support your interests always. So I try to find that song. Normally I'll check my history, but because I watch so much videos on YouTube, sometimes it'll get lost in the shuffle. So I gotta scroll up.
I just sent it. We'll be back in a few.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. As I'm trying to find it, people, give me a second. I might have to start cutting some of these audios and just put it on a MP3. Make shit easy. Come on, come on. Don't you hate sometimes when you can't play old music on YouTube? Well, I'm saying, oh, you can't do that. That's a strike and all that. But I said, for what? Did you make their money already? I mean, come on, man.
I mean, it's some bullshit if you ask me.
Yeah, man.
I gotta go back. I gotta go back to my damn district, get my notes. I had to check on some shit, make sure my family was okay. But
Okay.
you know, had to check on that, and
Okay,
it's
good.
fun. I believe they're well. I didn't have to hurt anybody, so that's great. Well,
Good.
so I'll just start off a little bit while I'm riding back to get my notes and everything at the district.
Okay.
You know, I'll say
And
this.
tonight's stream is gonna be important, people. So I want y'all to take notes and go back to replay if you miss it, because this is something dealing with not just the police, but just in general of the possibilities for you young black men or men that's our age or like 10 years younger to take the opportunity, you know. Because Charles actually shared me a live stream of I think elder talking to a police officer, man. I think he's from Baltimore. I think he's from DC though. I might be wrong.
Sergeant Dorsey from LAPD. She's a retired sergeant from over there. And another, I think he was an officer or some type of liaison.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to their live stream. Some things I agree with, some I didn't.
You know what, Charles? Since we on here, we gotta play some, let them hear what we talk about. So, how am I gonna do this? Let me go on my phone, find the name, and I will see if I can share my. If I can share it. I'm gonna try if I can share it here. I'm just not gonna play all of it, but we're just gonna skip through it. You get me? So this is what we do, people, because it's better showing than proving. I'm gonna go on my phone right now, find the name of it, play it, let y'all know what we're talking about. All right.
Okay. Because I really heard some things, you know, in it when they talked about defunding the police. I never want to be that person who speaks about law enforcement from a bitter standpoint. I want to get people uncut, whether if I agree with it or not, whether if it's true or just so disenfranchised that I can't wrap my mind around it.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to say, you know, when people talk about many different things and aspects of policing, it's a double-bladed sword.
Yep.
For the reason why is because you're in a job where 99% of the time people call you is because something's wrong in their life.
Family, what?
Mm-hmm.
And you're the one who has to tell people what they can and cannot do to keep society afloat. So when you get into this disdain of the police, sometimes I look at it like a disdain for authority itself. Because if it wasn't the police, it would be someone else.
Yep.
Think about it. A child and their parent. When the parent has to discipline them or tell them they can't do anything. The teacher and the student. There's many a times in human history that a lot of people do not understand until they get into the role.
Mm-hmm.
Then, when we have things as police brutality, we have to be able to know, okay, what's brutality and what's not. If you put your knee on someone's neck for over 8 minutes, that's brutality.
Mm-hmm.
If you are defending yourself, that's not brutality.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless on how people feel, regardless on whatever statistics they bring up, everyone has a right to defend themselves, even if I have to defend you. Now, if I go outside of my chosen and certified profession, that's wrong. So when a lot of people come up and say, "Well, we need to defund the police to send the money to other places," I think you ought to give them more funding. Why? Because you need more avenues for a lot of people. You need more avenues, speaking of which, like a bridge, or to support initiatives like the Great Faulkner.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have so many disenfranchised blacks looking for work in the next 6 months, hell, the next 6 weeks, who can actually perform the duties of a police officer to a great extent. But because we are always talked out, because we have this low self-esteem and this low viewing toward of ourselves, we kick ourselves out of these positions. And for some odd reason, you're going to get detractors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we need to defund the police. Defunding the police will hurt you because when those police retire or leave the department for whatever reasons, there has to be someone to replace that body.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be someone, and it's really hard to replace someone because you're not only replacing the body, you're also replacing experience.
All right.
So, but go ahead and play the clip.
I'm gonna try to see if I can play it here, and let's see if Google's gonna be friendly to me. I hope it's not kick me out. So let me screen share now. Cross my fingers. Okay, good.
And Tyrone, you have a wrench, so you can post.
Can you see it?
Okay, try it now.
Let me see. Hold on. It should be sharing now. You might have to click it, Charles, because I don't think I'm going to be able to. See if you're able to. Perfect. Oh, okay.
Let's roll that beautiful village.
All right, hold on. Let me go to it. It's 1 hour long, so this is not a long live stream. So anytime you feel like you need to stop it, stop it. All right.
Okay. Because I'm gonna we're gonna show the main parts of it.
My brother in blue.
Say something.
No, I was saying we're gonna show the main parts of it, and I'm also going to read from the Great Faulkner Initiative about law enforcement and when it comes to the black community and black law enforcement. But go ahead and show this beautiful footage.
Dr. DeLacy Davis, what's up?
Hey, you. How are you?
I am good.
I know the weather's great on the West Coast because we catch hell on the East Coast.
And we got mid-90s all week.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful? How are you?
I'm good. So listen, we've been doing what we've been doing from different corners of the world, and we have, were just by happenstance brought together some years ago, and we joined the formation of the National Coalition of Law Enforcement Officers for Justice Reform and Accountability at the behest of our brother in the struggle, Reddit Hudson, who's going to be with me on next week. But I just thought it was important because we all have different opportunities and we have different platforms. And I wanted to, on my little corner of the world, bring some of you guys over and introduce you to my family and have them know, number one, I'm not alone. And number two, what it is and how we together to further expand on that. So having said that, Dr. D, tell everybody a little bit about who you are, and then we're going to get into what you've been doing, the problems that you see, that I talk about. I want them to hear another version, but I really want us to focus on how do we fix this, because we already know what the problem is, and I want folks to hear how do we fix it. I'm all about resolution. So, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, of course, I'm a retired police sergeant, East Orange, 20 years on the police force, 5 years as a school principal in the city of Newark, New Jersey, of a charter school, and for the last 7 years, executive director for the Family Support Organization of Union County in Plainfield, New Jersey, where we provide support, education, and advocacy to parents and caregivers of children with special needs, those who have substance use challenges, and those who are juvenile justice system involved. I'm also the executive director for New Jersey Alliance of Family Support Organizations, where we're responsible for providing technical assistance and training and certification to all 15 of the organizations in the state of New Jersey. So I do a lot of that, and as you know, I just successfully defended my dissertation, Police Use of Force, examining the factors relating to police officers shooting unarmed black males, where I use a firearm simulator on North Jersey Police Department, 30 police officers, 4 firearm scenarios in shoot, don't shoot, and I was measuring the officer's error rate and reaction time, and we were looking to see if the officer's race, age, years of service, or place of residence had an impact on their decision to shoot or not shoot. Now, my null scenario was a black male who was unarmed advancing at the police officer, and the expectation was that the majority of them would shoot at him. In my study, they did not, and while my study was not generalizable beyond the department that I was studying, we could attribute some of the findings to the fact that there was a police director there working very hard on improving community police relationships. I had a larger population of officers of color than white officers, and all of that could have contributed to the findings. So I make some recommendations for future studies where I think that we should look at police officers and their behavior in scenarios, but also compare their behavior in the scenario to the body-worn camera to see if the behavior is the same, where we can pull up the same scenario. So you did this in the shoot, don't shoot scenario, but you did this when you thought nobody else was looking. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I founded Black Cops Against Police Brutality in 1991 while on the police force, which was unpopular back then. This was just before Rodney King, and people wanted to know what in the hell was wrong with me. Why would I start a organization called Black Cops Against Police Brutality? I'd only been on the job 5 years, but I'd seen things in law enforcement that didn't make sense to me. Like, I couldn't understand, and I was just asking, I thought, logical questions. I was a young cat, about 27, 28 years old, and I wanted to know, why are we locking residents up for drunk driving, and the white sergeant who comes to work drunk every day before the tour, we never lock him up? And why is it that white suspects come in uncuffed and black ones come in dragged in and beat up? So when I would see a drunk driver that was white brought in uncuffed, the next day I would take a picture of it first and take a note, and the next day I'd bring in a drunk driver uncuffed, and the desk sergeant or lieutenant, who was usually Caucasian, would say, why isn't that suspect cuffed? Because the white woman y'all brought in yesterday wasn't cuffed. So I thought it was a new policy. I was just following what I observed. And so of course, that made me a smart aleck, a wise guy, but I really pushed the limits in law enforcement at a time when it wasn't popular. So that's kind of who I've been, and I continue to be.
Let me ask you something, because for me, when I joined the LAPD, now I understood I was a black woman when I joined. I never had to be reminded, although they do like to do that to you. When you joined, were there ever instances where you felt like they were trying to remind you? What was it like? What did you have to endure, if anything, in those early years?
So I think for me, early on, there was a lot of things that I got to see. So I joined the Black Police Organization as soon as I came on the force. So Sergeant Irv Childress was president of the Kinsmen, which was a part of the National Black Police Association. So I knew advocacy early. I also didn't like law enforcement very much. I joined the police force to become a musician. I mean, to finance my music career. I was already a musician. I wanted to finance my music career. So I felt that would be a stable career. So when I got there, in fact, I got to meet Nobody by Nature, and we became friends, Vinny Tretch and KG. I became the instructor at the academy for Queen Latifah's brother, Lance, before he passed. And as a result of that, we had a relationship. So I utilized and leveraged my music connections to also become a better police officer. I was an outside-the-box thinker. But I can tell you that the reminder for me was black officers talking to me privately, saying, listen, we're okay that you want to do this community thing and you want to do this music thing, but we like knocking coconuts in the head. And that was a reference to the Caribbean community. We had a large Caribbean population in Orange, and it's one of the blackest cities in the state. And I said to the guy, well, you also need to know that I like testifying against cops that knock coconuts in the head. So if you crack one in front of me, whatever that means, I promise you I will testify. And during my career, I testified against 2 black officers. Didn't feel good, the hardest decision to ever make, but it was the correct decision to take. And what I reminded black people and black cops of often was that the life you save may be your own. Because I live in a black community. I came from black community. I was raised by this black community. And therefore, at the very minimum, my oath was also about protecting the very black community that gave birth to me. And so if I die in this community because it was my time to die, but I'll be damned if I'm going to watch you kill my community. And I do not at least stand up to defend them with all that I have. As I've often said, I would rather die a man than live a slave any day.
And so as a result of those 2 instances where you had to testify, where you did testify, was there any backlash?
Absolutely. Cost
What
me.
did it look like? What did it look like?
It cost much of my career, so no one would back me up. When I went on calls in the city, my nearest backup should have been 3 or 4 blocks away. But whenever I called for backup, they were busy, and these were black officers doing it to me. So my nearest backup came 20 blocks away. Even supposed to come out of zone. These were brothers with me. They would try and come out of zone to make sure I had a backup. Sometimes it was the community that backed me up. I remember trying to make an arrest on drugs in a high crime area where I was.
Hello?
That remind me of what a friend of mine once said, that she had trouble getting backup. And I told her, part of that's your fault, because you should have been vocal about that. And I would have dug in asses. Now, I'm going to read a little excerpt from the Great Faulkner Initiative. Thank you, Simply Unique, for posting it. Those of you who don't have it, please save it, email it, share it with your friends. This is coming from the law or law enforcement section. Because of the unique experience of Black American citizens within the United States, which has left an ongoing legacy of generational trauma imposed on Black Americans, perpetrated via the lack of wealth, resources, and opportunities, the major impedance from which all environmental impedance, from fatherlessness to poverty, an unstable home environment, broken family structure, etc., stem from, parentheses, Oxford Handbook of the Economics of Poverty. This is the massive and grossly negligent issue which the broader society unaffected by these impediences would rather avoid. However, these impediences remain as virtually near permanent fixtures in Black American community, wholly sustained through the enforcement of law. However, law enforcement in the Black community has been, for the most part, adversarial. Why do you think that the Black community and Black people look at each other as an antithesis? Because the law enforcement has been seen as adversarial. It's been seen as the enemy. It's been seen as the opposer of freedom. That's why it's generational. And usually something that's generational is what? Taught.
Yep.
Not only taught, it's reinforced. With the Black American communities within urban centers being over policed, this us versus them mentality becomes its own impedance. The differential in power was created through systematic and institutional racism. Hope y'all paying attention to this.
Mm-hmm.
However, due to the diminishing of the American empire, racism is an unsustainable practice for future progress of American society. The push towards equitable and fair society requires a shift in perception. Hmm. We're going to get to that in a minute. Because of this us versus them mentality, the Black community has, for the most part, perceived the police who enforce law as foreign occupiers within Black American communities. Sounds pretty accurate for most, doesn't it?
Yeah, for a lot.
It is difficult to perceive police any other way. When young Black American males are arrested or incarcerated at a rate 3 times higher than their white counterparts, and more often than not receive more severe sentencing than their white counterparts for doing the same crime, and more than 3 times more likely to be killed by the police than their white counterparts. Protesting and rioting so far has not been efficient or effective. We propose a more proactive approach. However, it requires the Black American community to take action in the proper capacity.
Mm-hmm.
By proper capacity, policy is implied. However, in the recent decades in the Black American community, we have become more focused on political Super Bowl, i.e., the presidency, than the regular season, i.e., local politics.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a problem with the way laws are enforced in your local city or state, those are not issues the president can solve. However, they are issues that can be solved by local mayors, city council members, judges, district, city, or state attorneys and governors. A more efficient policy and practice would be to push for law enforcement pipelines in order to have more Black American officers on the Black departments that live within the system or are from affected communities of which they serve. Remember, thank you all. We're going to read a little bit more of that later on. The reason why I wanted to stop that is because, number one, I don't like cowardly situations. I don't like cowardly people. But I will say this. It is your duty to serve your community. No matter how many degrees you get, no matter how many accolades people will afford you, you will always be Black in this community. I had to relight that cigar. You're going to have to understand one thing is clear about power. Power is never given, it's taken. No one will ever receive power by begging, by pleading. You have to take the power and play by the rules. As Triple H would say, it's all about the game and how you play it. It's all about control and how you can take it.
Mm-hmm.
You are at a fork in the road within American society today, where America is calling for you again. You have an opportunity because racism is shaken to its core. Will there still be racist people? Of course. As long as you have 2 people, there's always going to be some type of prejudice. But right now, when you're talking about policing, The reason why you're being policed in such a way is because you take no action within your destiny. You are not the captain of your destiny. You are not the master of your fate. You have been trained and indoctrinated to leave that to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have I said the Professor Cerulean Gray and myself brainstormed, talked for hours and hours on end. Hours became days, days became weeks, weeks became months, months became years. What started from a 30-minute conversation became a 3-hour conversation. How can we help our society grow? And we said, by George, I have this idea, you have this idea. Why not come together and form up like Voltron? But Officer Faulkner, the police department is nowhere for a black man need to be. My reaction to you is shut up and take your cowardly self to the back. Let the real men lead. Let the heroes triumph. Let the cowards sing praises of the triumphant. Here it is. You have 2 OG black police officers. One's a retired sergeant. One's another retiree who's, I think he was also a sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
And he finished school and got his PhD. Some things do I agree? Mostly I do. Some things I don't, but that's human nature. This is the reason why you get no respect in your communities, because you don't even take the audacity, you don't even take the pride in protecting them. What did President Kennedy say so long ago? Ask not what your country could do for you, ask for what you can do for your country. This is the reason why in the black community, a prosperity preacher can become a millionaire.
Mm-hmm. Well, any question?
Because you're looking for a savior. And what's the third pendant of everything I say the black community doesn't give anything about?
The black boys, the hero down there, and the education.
You don't even have the audacity. You don't even have the courage to be your own hero. And this is the reason why they will make cartridges of you being cowardly, even though historically we've been some of the bravest soldiers and police officers and firefighters in history. But we won't even fight. We won't even take the time to encourage our boys to be great, to be heroes. We won't. And you wonder why you're having so many black ladies out there single, their children fatherless.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have I said, I'll help you get through the recruiting process? You wonder why she loves Pookie and Ray Ray. There's a good reason why. Because Pookie and Ray Ray never left.
They were never derelict. Well, they were derelict in some way, but at least
they were
good.
See, they were derelict in some ways, but at least they didn't leave.
Yeah.
And then let's just talk about it a little deeper. At least they didn't leave her behind. Because when you're a great man, she's going to submit, or she knows she's going to get left. Continue the video.
All right. So make sure you guys support your interest, support the cause. You know how I do it.
Walking the beat at one point, and I couldn't get in on the radio. Whether they were keying the radio, not letting me get in for backup. But I'll never forget, one of the well-known drug dealers was standing there as they were attempting to jump me, and he said, "You're not gonna jump this officer. He's fair with the community. Now y'all want to fight him one-on-one? I will stand here and y'all can fight him until he drops or y'all drop. So y'all just, but no one's jumping him. Not allowed any bad cops to put drugs on us or to beat us down." And that was my career. And so I spent the bulk of my career, 17 of my 20 years, fighting my own department. And my department is the blackest department in the state of New Jersey. It was like 97%, 90% black and brown people on the force. White supervision, but black leadership in terms of the chief, the mayor, and black officers on the force. And so I just was determined, for whatever reason, and I can't say it was my plan. It was just God planting a seed in me that said, you must speak up. My first lecture in 1991 was at Rikers Island in New York. And I went and spoke to 200 or 300 lifers because I felt that I had lacked the courage to call out behavior that I knew was questionable at best. And I let that be my launch pad. And from then on, I was sailing. And I've continued to speak out. And it's been a dangerous experience. I remember going to a black police officers meeting one Saturday, and a black sergeant, who at the time was the mayor's bodyguard, came up behind me, caught me from behind, and choked me off the ground. Now, I'm at that time, 5'8", 5'9". He's 6'1", 6'2", and a big dude, and is choking me. I'm literally trying to get my gun to shoot him off me. They're holding my arm to keep me from getting to the gun, and somebody else got the other arm of him trying to get him off my neck. I wound up filing a criminal complaint, and that went through the courts. So I had some struggles with black officers. I used to say, I don't mind fighting a racist white officer, but I had so many Negro black officers in line in front of them that I had to fight them to get to it. And that's how it looked for me in my agency and outside of it.
And does that still go on currently?
Yes, it does go on. So
it hasn't gotten better.
So I would say that it hasn't gotten better. I think that law enforcement has gotten worse. I think that there are some black officers that have come forward. As I said to you off camera, I think that black and brown women and other people of goodwill in law enforcement have come forward and decided that enough is. Last 20 years, it will not be black men leading the struggle against police violence and police abuse. It would be black women, and definitely inside of law enforcement. Just in terms of my own research, one of the theories that I used was standpoint theory by George William Hegel of 1807, and he was looking at the experience between the slave and the slave master and how knowledge is acquired. Knowledge and power are acquired and utilized. And what he says is not only is it the oppressor and the oppressed, but the perspective of the oppressed is much more unbiased and objective than that of the oppressor. And so I think that not knowing that theory then, but that has led me to believe and understand that black women would lead this charge in law enforcement. Look at yourself. We're proud of you. I mean, you've accomplished quite a bit. But
Stop. Okay, this is where I don't agree with the doctor.
Yeah.
I'm not saying black women haven't spoke up.
Yeah.
But I will say this. When it comes to the good old boy system, a lot of black women have benefited.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
When you have feminine charms, a nice behind, and a cute smile, a lot of them have gotten chosen before the brothers.
Oh.
So when it comes to your promotions, and especially when it comes to certain, now, I'm not saying black women or black police officers don't catch hell, but if we're going to tell the truth the way the truth is, there are some people who are promoted now in departments who never should have been.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people who were put in charge of districts and precincts who shouldn't have been. And I'm gonna tell you this one: a lot of black women in these police departments. Well, you have the faithful few who will put up a good fight. Some of them will look at it like the doctor said, I'm gonna just use this job. Is this a job to finance my? He didn't really want to be a cop to be a cop.
Mhm.
He had to be forced to want to help the community. Hopefully, I don't know the guy. Hopefully, I'm just going by his words. But hopefully, it seems like he's a good dude. But that wasn't me. And I don't think I'm any better than him. So you got to understand something. I've been in a department where I've seen a lot of women rise up. Nothing wrong with that if they earned it. Just like there's nothing wrong with anybody if they earn their position. But how many people earn their position and how many people have others to look out for them? Continue, Chaos.
All right, everybody. I hope y'all donate and support the channel. This is very important. It's educational.
Mala,
YouTube pinks.
I'm gonna say this. Excuse me, Chaos. I don't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Mala, a whole lot of. I'm gonna just bluntly say it. Hell no. A lot of women did not earn their stripes. There
Yeah,
are some who
I
did,
agree with
but
that.
there is not a lot of women who earned their stripes.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it wasn't for simp supervisors and commanders, a lot of them wouldn't have stripes at all. A lot of them wouldn't even have stripes at all. Continue, Chaos.
All right, thank you.
And so, in addition to shedding a light on what's wrong with our profession, I also want to be a recruitment tool, right? And I have people who ask me, why would anybody want to do that job, or say, I certainly would never want to do that? What would you say to someone because I'm a firm believer that change is going to come from the inside, and let me know if you feel that way as well. What do you say to those folks who wonder, why would I work so hard when I don't have the support?
I would say that if that were not the case, we wouldn't be here. See, Jesus was one of the baddest revolutionaries I ever studied, and he was one man. Moses was one man. Mahatma Gandhi, one man. Mother Teresa, one woman. My grandmother was the strongest black man I've ever known. My grandmother would fight you to the death. And
Stop.
God damn, what the hell?
Stop. There we go. I was trying my best not to curse. I didn't even say one curse word this whole class. You notice that?
Yeah.
But that's some bullshit.
Yeah.
Once again, fine to have your views. No, it's not my views. It's what I've seen. It's not only what I've seen, it's what statistically is proven.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? There's plenty of women who did not pass the PT test, could not pull the damn gun charging handle back by themselves. Okay?
Yeah.
There's plenty of women, as soon as they get to the department, they're sleeping around with 4 or 5 guys.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, you have the great female officers who I had the pleasure to serve with, who you didn't have one time to tell them, take care of your post. They took pride. They were ashamed if somebody came on their post. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the females I stood up for. Not the ones who trying to sleep their way to the top, okay?
So many.
Because the ones who are the great officers who check a motherfucker in a minute, who handle their post without question, who are not looking for the easy way out, that's who I speak up for. Continue. But no. Before we even continue, see, this is the reason why I didn't agree with everything he said, because he's looking from a gynocentric standpoint. My grandmother was the strongest black man I know. Really?
Mm-hmm.
Really? So you telling me your grandmother is going to get pulled over by the cops like any black man now? See, this is the reason why I know this might ruffle some feathers. I know this is going to be some shit that's going to be said. I know I'm going to lose subscribers for saying it.
Mm-hmm. You gotta keep it real, bro. You gotta keep 100.
But I'm going to keep it 100. If black women really had to go through what the average black man had to go through, they would commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
See, to us, to y'all, it's black girl serious, but it's black boy normality.
Mm-hmm.
The average black woman doesn't get fucked with by the police. And I'm trying my best not to cuss. I'm trying to keep it etiquette. But I'm gonna keep it real funky for a minute. Bullshit. You wanna tell me bullshit that they go through the same shit on average that we go through? You're the ones giving the jobs. You're the ones giving the kids. Like BGS said about the rigged game, the game is not just rigged, it's choreographed. Are you telling me you earned your strike? Get the fuck out of here. Because guess what? I've worked on a police department over a decade, almost another half.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I had a decade of military experience before that. So you telling me that they got to go through the hard shit that the men have to go through? No. There are a very few who actually keep themselves up. You don't hear anything about them. Yeah, that's the ones I'll defend. I'll be like this. I don't care what she is. That's a damn good officer right there. She could back me up anytime. I'll back her up anytime. She ain't trying to look for some little cubby hole to hide. She's going to come here, regardless if she's feeling good or not, and do the job to the best of her abilities. Go ahead.
All right. Hope we getting our likes up though, guys.
And there are those who have gone before us who have paved the way that we have obligation morally, spiritually, and culturally to at the very minimum do what they did. They were faced with overwhelming odds. It was against the law to read, write, and pretend that you knew any damn thing, let alone know anything. And now here we are with education being free, however bad it may be, and we have the audacity and the unmitigated gall to pretend to be stupid. We're not a stupid people. So the reason that we would go up against overwhelming odds, because people who had less than us did more than us when they were here. So why would not at least every generation has an obligation to at least meet the standard of the previous generation and make a way for the next one to come? I've got children and my children's children that I want to make the world better for, as do you. And therefore, even against overwhelming odds, if I wasn't standing up, I wouldn't know you. And if you weren't standing up, I wouldn't want to know you. That's the reality, right? You've got other folks that you've lined up. Carrie Horn out of Buffalo. Rochelle Bilal, the police director down in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. She's the first woman elected sheriff in 186 years. Why would she go up against the two-time black incumbent in a very black city when she doesn't have the money? He had $1 million. She had less than $100,000. Why would she go up against him? Because she won by 20,000 votes. Because she believed, and she believed because the people that went before her believed. We have to remember that when we had nothing, we were always faithful. We were always a people that believed in our people. We believed in each other. And even when we had some doubt, we would hold each other up at the worst of times. My grandmother was born 1901, died 1982, youngest of 10 children. All her aunts and uncles were slaves. And grandma tells me that story. That was my mother's mother. Okay, I am the 5th generation of my family. Professor Gable Day from Loudoun County, Virginia, 1818 to 1895. How dare I be anything less than what he was 5 generations ago?
That's where I got you here, dude. I got my
hold up for a second.
Here,
but that's another key point I wanted to speak on. See, in the black community, do we still respect black leadership?
Mm-hmm.
Now, any sister that earns her stripes, I salute.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to hear anything about saying, but black men aren't willing to lead. Do you want to be the king or do you want to be the queen? So I'm going to say, continue.
All right, thank you. Let's continue.
But I knew that you would not hold back. And I know that you are passionate, much like I am. And so, when I think about, all that's wrong, and I want to talk eventually about how do we fix this, but you kind of alluded to it already. What is it about what we see, what we know, what we've experienced personally, what we see others going through, what we see our communities going through, and very little in the way of change? What keeps you up at night?
Waking up a Negro. That's one of the things that keeps me. I often have said, if I ever wake up and I act like the Negroes that I'm fighting against, I want y'all to put me to sleep. I'm with Dr. Kevorkian. I believe in euthanasia. Some Negroes, we just got to euthanize, right? Because they're just useless, right? What keeps me up at night is waking up one day and realizing that I'm the old person that I talked about when I was a young person. There's a difference between old people and elders. Old people are damaged, just old and in the way. Elders, as they get older, they get wiser, and we make way for young people to take the stage. That keeps me up at night. The fact that we claim to be for young people and we empower none of them, that we don't give young people the opportunity to make choices, to make decisions, and to be the powerful young creatives that they really are and truly are when they're unmolested culturally by this society, Western society, and some of us. In fact, some of us hate young people, and we act like it. And so that keeps me up at night. Finally, what keeps me up at night is Black people not getting to where I know we rightfully belong on the stage. We cannot give birth to the world and be last in everything. In fact, the only way you could be last at everything is if everybody is working against your own best interest, up to and including you, which is us.
And so, we found each other because we are all seeking this thing, right? Reform, justice, and accountability across these 18,000 police departments. And so what does that look like for you? And you can just go through each one: reform, justice, and accountability. What does that look like for you?
I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to hit them this way, right? At the federal level, we're talking about trauma-informed policing. We're talking about pattern practice investigations that were stopped under Sessions that need to be reinstituted because police don't do anything unless they're compelled to do it. Frederick Douglass says power concedes nothing without demand, never has and never will. Know just what any people will quietly submit to, and you know the exact measure of the wrong and injustice will be imposed upon them. And they'll be continued until they resist it with words or with blows or with both. So we need to have investigations because police departments aren't going to do the right thing because they're the right people. They were born out of slavery and enforcing slave patrols to enforce people to stay enslaved. So why in the hell would a system that's designed to do what it does and continue to do it well into perpetuity, why would it change itself? There's no such animal. And in the North, while they were being formed by Robert Peel in 1829 based on the
Fix your mic, Charles.
Can you hear me now?
You sound a little muffled.
Let me come back in. I keep saying this to people. Slave patrols were bounty hunters, not law enforcement agents.
Yeah.
Officers. Okay? Mm-hmm. Like he's going to talk about Sir Robert Peel, which started in London. The same shit from the story of Sir Robert Peel is the same shit we're talking about in the Great Faulkner Initiative. How the people, how the elitists, the Plutarchs, as Cerulean would say, which basically means the rich aristocracy, would actually get law enforcement agents and pick who they want instead of having the agency pick from the people from within the cities or the towns. And to correct unlawful practices, which they found, Sir Robert Peel said, no, we're going to pick from the people to police the people. We're not going to have outsiders or the Plutarchs tell us who's going to police us. See, a lot of times it comes to education versus intellectualism. You have to form your own Black intelligentsia and have facts over feelings. Continue, Chaos.
All right.
Metropolitan and police in England, they were union busting. They were doing all those nefarious things because Robert Peel had cut his chops by oppressing the Irish in England. And so, therefore, we're talking about two systems of policing that were based on oppression. So Dr. Francis Cress Welsing says in the ISIS papers, the keys to the colors, there's 9 people area activities that are dominated by white supremacy. And we have to either get inside of those institutions, tear them down, reform them, or rebuild them, but we need to make them just for everyone, right? And so she talks about education, economics, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Pick any one of them and reform them, but they all lead back to the same thing because the police department is an arm of government. And so police department is enforcing, they're protecting property and enforcing the system so that they don't upset the status quo. And so we happen to be on the bottom. So we need pattern and practice investigations. We need to address qualified immunity. When police officers begin to lose their homes, their cars, their wives, their children, and their other girlfriends, right, or boyfriends, then they'll stop behaving the way they do because they won't have that slush fund to play with. We need whistleblower protections for police officers who come forward. But we understand that if you come through under CIPA complaint, Conscientious Employee Act, Protection Act of 1983, which is a federal statute, we recognize that police officers don't get that. If Sammy the Bull Gravano, who was with the mafia, killed 19 people and we could forgive all 19 in exchange for him giving up John Gotti, then tell me why a cop that hasn't done anything criminal but wants to come forward does not get same level of protection when they want to give up brutal cops and cops that put their knees on people's necks. Okay, we have to address the police bill of rights. We not only need to ban chokehold, we need to ban any kind of torture that puts you in a compromising position. Because the social reality is, and this is what the attorney at war, Alton Maddox, used to say, that black people are always knocking at the wrong door, asking the wrong question. Why are we pushing to have a ban on chokehold when what Derek Chauvin did to George Floyd was not a chokehold. It was a knee to the neck. And so it's a compression. So we're fighting for the wrong thing. We need to ban anything that's going to put people in compromise. That's torture. And that's what that was. I believe in divest and reallocation of.
They do know that many of law enforcement agencies actually ban chokeholds and ban any strikes to the spine, to the back of the head, to the back of the neck.
I wonder that's
to the groin, unless urgent circumstances or life and death situation. Excuse me. So that being said, it's kind of funny, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the reason why I said it goes back into the training. There are 2 types of suffocation holds. 2 types of ways you can choke a person. Windpipe and carotids. Windpipe choke is when you have your forearm or an object against the throat, putting pressure on it. It is the longest and hardest way to choke a person. It's the most painful. You'll see it all the time in mixed martial arts when someone has their forearm and their wrist in the throat. It's painful. It's not they're going to go to sleep. It's painful. Those are the more dangerous chokes. The quickest way to put a person to sleep is something called a sleeper hold, which is when you have the bicep and the forearm and the throat is actually in the crook of their neck. And you're pressing against the carotids and you got 5-10 seconds for them to go to sleep. The reason why you banned them is because people don't train the same way. A lot of people don't even know the difference between those. Now, putting your knee on someone's thigh or leg or having their legs wrapped up, that's cool. You immobilize them. Now, when it comes to painful holds, I'm not against that. The reason why, hell, I was on World Star putting a guy in a Kimura to subdue him.
Oh, you wasn't World Star?
Huh?
You on World Star Hip Hop?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shit. What
Put
was
him in a
it called?
Kimura. I don't know. That's probably like, it was on Old York and 39th Street. I don't know what they got it, but I had the guy in the Kimura. That painful hold actually saved me from actually repeatedly striking him, which is uncompromising. That's why I always say you got to work on your vocabulary. So this is another thing. I believe that officers should have time to go train these predicaments. Officers should be in physical peak condition that they best possibly can be. This is the reason why you need funding for the police. Trust me, there's a lot of funding that goes to your schools, your police, your sanitation, your fire. It's just that black people do not ask the right questions, like he says. Like, do you think about it? Some police, I think a lot of police ought to train boxing, kickboxing, wrestling, both freestyle and Greco-Roman, and ground fighting. I'll say this. I've actually put a guy, had to wrestle a psych patient. I grabbed wrist control, which means I grabbed control of his wrist so he can't move. My legs were grapevine into his. He couldn't move. If he wanted to go left, I'll just push him left. He wanted to go right, he goes there. He couldn't move unless I wanted him to. He tired out. Didn't have to put him in a chokehold. Didn't even have to go for any submission moves, just basic wrestling. To the point where he was exhausted. He couldn't move anymore. But when you actually say that we want to see what the police actually learns when it comes to defense tactics or hand-to-hand combat, which they don't say in police departments, they want to say defense tactics. Know what your police officers can do and can't do. And know how to act when you're in front of the police is also a necessary requirement. But continue, Chaos.
All right.
The police budget funds so that we're not simply getting rid of the police, because in my neighborhood I got some cousins, Pookie and Peaches and Ray Ray and them, who hope you get rid of the police and fun because they're going to vamp on the community. And then we have to talk about elected officials. We need to make it taboo for elected officials to take money from police unions anywhere in this country. If you're committed to our community, that needs to be taboo. And therefore, and this is all just at the federal level, and that's where we get accountability. Lord, did I lose her?
Listen, you bring us so much heat, dude. You done froze the damn. You froze up. Yeah, either that or the gremlins are trying to keep you from saying what you say. And listen, family, we've been talking like this together for over a year, for sure. And I just want you to know, he has not bugged my house. I did not give him any notes. We feel the same. We think the same. We've experienced the same. East Coast, West Coast. There is no difference. And so it's amazing, but because I know you, D. And so I know, how you think. I know why you think. But I thought it was important for other people to see that, number one, I'm not alone.
That's right.
And number two, that while we talk about the same thing, sadly, we're talking about different states, but we're talking about the same thing, right?
Absolutely.
There is no difference. And so let me ask you about some of the things that are being put forth in terms of air quote reform, right? Because I think many of these police chiefs are being disingenuous when they talk about the things that they want to do with regards to changing the mindset, the culture. And, that's a whole nother thing. You can talk to that in a minute. How do you really change the mindset? But I hear them talking about everything except for accountability, right? And you alluded to some of that, take away some of the toys that these officers are able to get by having them have to pay a portion of whatever this 1.2 million settlement is going to be, instead of it being taxpayer money. So how do we get there? And what do you think about what's being purported as reform on a national level? I know I think Cory Booker, and isn't he your senator in New Jersey, talking about a national registry? I'm like, dude, miss me with that. They already got a list. They know who these people are.
Yeah. So don't you know which of your family members shouldn't come to the family cookout and the family reunion? Okay, they know who the bad cops are. It's just it's unfortunate. One, you have to demilitarize the police. Let's start with that. The 1033 program that allows you to have surplus military equipment. There's no need to have a tank with civilians. None. You don't need a tank. You don't need to come dressed in all black. You don't need a helmet.
Bullshit.
You don't need flashbangs. You don't need that stuff on the streets.
Bullshit.
That's number one. Number two, police departments are not committed to reform. They're committed to doing whatever they need to do to get the pressure up off of them, which is why I'm so proud that the young people are still on the streets, right? Make all the noise, raise all the hell you can raise, because that's the only time we ever see change occur in this community. The last time we saw seismic change, we saw some change after Rodney King of 92.
Pause it.
You didn't see the change until
Right.
68, 67, 68 rebellions. And in 1970, you saw your...
Number one, if you ever notice one thing about it, most of these quote unquote rebellions that we have now, protests, you'll see damn near about 85% white people nowadays.
Yep.
You don't even see blacks out there anymore. So let me hit up on something. Do we need flashbangs? Yes. If you try reading a house without a flashbang, it's hard. It is hard. And mostly, we don't even have flashbangs. That's mostly for SWAT and other specialized units. You have patrol rifles. Yes, you have Colt rifles. You have shotguns. And if someone asks me, in my personal and professional opinion, every cop should be trained on a shotgun, their sidearm, and a rifle. Does that mean that you need that rifle and shotgun? Ask me all the time? No. But you rather have it and never need it than need it and never have it. When you have people in BDUs, I want people to get out this notion of, oh, it's intimidating. Bullshit. Okay, it's uniform. Why do you have a tank? Only SWAT has a tank. And that's for dynamic entries. Meaning when you're going to have somebody with high-powered weapons. And a lot of these times, if you look at the riots that we had a few years ago in Baltimore, did you have any police shoot anyone who was throwing a brick or any sharp objects at the officers? No. But no one talked about the officers that were injured, especially the black officers who were injured. So you're going to need certain equipment for certain things. It's not about trying to intimidate, it's trying to get the job done. See, people forget that. See, some people just need to forget that police are there to do a job. We got to keep people safe. Sometimes it's not the prettiest thing to do. Me putting the guy in the Camaro was not the prettiest aspect of law enforcement, but it had to be done. We forget that you ask the police, especially our black officers who are from the neighborhood, to do something that not a lot of people have the courage to do. And then we want to critique it, especially if they're wrong. You have many departments nowadays, if one person makes a complaint, they're going to go through this whole investigation, which they should, but it's taxing. Even if they know it's bullshit, you can hold up somebody's career for a whole year over a bullshit complaint. But yet, there are those who are criminals with badges who it takes an act of God for them to get caught. But I digress. Continue.
Your black your first black police executives in 1970. You also saw your first black mayors of major cities, including Newark, New Jersey, when we had a Newark, the Black and Puerto Rican Coalition, led by Amiri Baraka and some others who came together to get a black mayor, which led to black police executives like Charlie Knox, like Hubert Williams, who's running the Police Foundation, and those kinds of directors. You also saw Gary, Indiana, with black leadership. And Kurt Smoke down in Baltimore. So what happened
I
is
met
that
Kurt Smoke years
they're
ago.
trying to get the pressure off by doing something.
Wait a minute. What you said?
I met former Mayor Smoke years ago. I can tell you.
Okay.
Nothing, right? We don't need a registry. All you need to do is, I just alluded to that when I said whistleblower protection. If you tell me tomorrow that you're going to give me the same thing you gave Sammy the Bull, we'll tell, right? I mean, because cops don't want to snitch, right? They got no snitching and get there to be mad at the kids on the street for not snitching, right? There's all sorts of things. Now, let me go to the state police. One is special prosecutor to investigate police use of force and police homicides. And that should be all that they do. That's, again, another level of accountability. Why? Because when there's a special prosecutor, they don't need the police to make cases and to make their career. All they're doing is investigating police. So that changes the game significantly. We have to change the standards, as California is attempting to do, but just not well. And that is from the use of deadly force from a reasonable standard to necessary, right? In the police academy, I was told that the last thing you want to do is employ deadly force. In our communities against us, the first thing they do is pull a gun out in the first 2.5 seconds. Tamir Rice, they jumped out the car in 2 seconds or less, opened fire on a 12-year-old kid. Why? Can't explain any of that. We need licensing. New Jersey is now looking at licensing police officers so that if you lose your license, you don't get to go to another department and get a job. That's something that's a legitimate reform that they could put in place. Then we have to look at the police academies and who's being dismissed. Because I surmise, and I used to teach in one of the academies, that we need to look at the police academy dismissals by race, ethnicity, and gender. Because we see black men and women, and usually the women, being washed out of police academies for firearms and physical fitness. That's important. That becomes critical. And then finally, at the local level, we need civilian oversight, right? In some form or fashion. It took us only almost 20 years to get a civilian review board in New Haven, Connecticut. Malik Jones' mother. Malik Jones was killed by the police in East Haven on a motor vehicle stop in New Haven. Even the black cops then didn't have the courage or the testicular fortitude to stand up and call out the cop. We want to wait till the end of the investigation. Aren't you an investigator? Why in the hell did you need to wait till the end of the investigation other than to buy time like the same people are giving us these fake reforms? We need to redirect funds to social services, mental health, homelessness, rehab for addiction, as well as domestic violence. We need mental health first aid. Those are people that are trained to be first responders that can come when you see a person having a mental health crisis, and we can be there to help them until the professionals come, not the police. We need to divest the police in terms of
Stop right there.
I don't think we should have school resource officers because you need to have the right kind of school resource officer. You don't like children. Why are you working in a school?
Okay.
I like the brother, but I see the bullshit he has. He wants to talk about why are the women washing out from physical fitness and the handgun. There are women out there who do not have the manual dexterity to pull the trigger. They do not have the grip strength. They do not have the physical upper body strength to do the push-ups and sit-ups. I like to tell this again. There was a situation years ago in Baltimore where two officers and one female sergeant, all female, all three were females, one sergeant, was walking foot, and they seen this known drug dealer out and about, and the sergeant noticed that he had a handgun in his waistband. So the sergeant did the right thing. What she's supposed to do is grab the handle so he can't pull it. So the guy is trying to fight to get away. He wasn't fighting to hurt them, but he was fighting to get away. and a signal 13 was called, which means officer down or officer needs assistance. And it took a male officer to subdue them. The 3 female officers were injured. Now, at that moment, would I be mad if the officers would have took their nightstick and go upside his head? No, that's a deadly force situation. You're literally fighting over a gun. But when you talk about why they washing out, this isn't, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Being in these fields of work are not some G.I. Jane playground. This is a very dangerous work field. Any officer, black, white, male, female, straight, homosexual, bisexual, whatever, green, blue, atheist, Christian, Muslim, Jew, Gentile, will tell you this. This is nothing to play with. And you got to take the best applicants you can. Okay? It's not about, oh, they disqualify me because I'm a woman. We have plenty of women. I mean, even though 88% of the police departments in America are male, so you have at least 12% female. This is a male-dominated field because it's something that men typically are going to naturally draw to. So if you're a lady, just like I said in the military, you're asking women to do something that's out the norm. Salute to the women who can actually hack it. Because I know for a fact, because I personally train women in weightlifting and physical fitness, boxing, wrestling, and MMA before. They have to overcome a big attribute that's not in their favor. It's called physical strength. Okay?
Mhm.
It's called ruthlessness. If I told a lady to fight, I got to teach her to be ruthless. Especially if she's going to fight crime. Do you think the criminal is going to have mercy on her?
No.
So she can't be afraid to, draw her weapon. She can't be afraid if somebody grabs her weapon to finger jab somebody in the eye or throat. Or if she's struggling to keep her weapon retention, to grab a knife from her side pocket and defend herself and her weapon. It's not about, oh, we're kicking females out. It's about, okay, if I let this person on the street and you're training them, the worst thing any trainer wants to see is their student or trainee injured or killed. And they knew that person was not suitable for the job. Continue.
All right.
And all you're doing is now moving our children that much closer to a criminal history. And we know disproportionately that black and brown kids, while they may be committing crime at the same rate as white kids, they're being thrust into the system much more quicker. They're not getting curbside adjustment. They're not getting released out of custody. And therefore, what we find is our children now have criminal records and they can't get jobs. Because what happens is when other people go to jail, do time and get out, they get a hookup. And I'm not talking about black and brown people. When we go to jail and do time and we come out, we got a scarlet letter on us for life. Can never get a job that's making minimum wage, let alone above minimum wage. And so all of that, then we need evidence-based strategies to address some of the issues and concerns that police are responding to. We need to reduce the reliance on police. I told you about the school resource officers. And then we need to deal with the stressors like racism, right? Racism is a stressor in and around our community. Black officers want to go along to get along, right? We want to be accepted. So some of us are worse than the most racist of white officers. And what I've said that got me put out of the police union for a while is that the organizational culture of law enforcement is white male dominated, racist, sexist, homophobic, and then you might find a good cop.
Wow. So, having said all that, because I know that this is going to be, I don't expect to see it in my lifetime. I don't know about you, but how can we engage and involve the community? Because I think that they have a role to play. We can tell them, you know, you preaching over there on the East Coast, I'm preaching over here on the West Coast, and then folks say, well, you know, voting don't matter, and they not listening, and why am I going to tell, blah, blah, blah. What role does the community play, and how do we engage them?
Let me give you one quick example. When I was in my early 20s, I was speaking for the Urban League and young people in the Urban League and NAACP youth components. One of the young men from the Urban League wanted me to come in as a guest speaker. The Negro that was in charge said he's too radical, too extreme, and we won't let him come. So they said his fee is too high. So I said, I'll come for free. Then they told him, well, no, we just don't want him. He's radical. And they didn't let me come. Well, that young man became an aide to a senator that in Washington, D.C. He remembered me and he called me up and said, Brother DeLacy, you've been doing this work, and black people coming here and begging for jobs. I want to show you how to get money. And showed me how to write for an earmark. And we were able to get approved for an earmark for $1.5 million. By the time it got cut up, went through the Congress and all of that, and came back to New Jersey, it was $850,000 by both congressional and senatorial delegations approved it. And then what I did was I took the 20 young people from the community who I've been doing work within the community and said, how do you want to divide your money? What do you want to spend it on? What do young people want? We took young people to Ghana, West Africa, all expenses paid, 26 of them hosted by the president of the country. We took 36 young people to South Korea to the World Peace Games, playing basketball, men and women, young and old, all expenses paid, got passports, the whole bit to see the world. And we did all in between. And the point I'm making is the community fails to understand how much power they actually have. That's just the story of one young man at 16 who winds up going to D.C., understanding how the system works and getting the money back home to the community, and me understanding that I should take care of the community and not myself. That's number one. One of the most powerful institutions in our community is the Black church. All day, every day, no matter how we slice it. I'm a Muslim man, but I came up out of the church. And the reality is that the churches are not responding to the needs of the masses of the people. I tell pastors all the time, if you're not out on the street, I don't give a damn about what you claim, period. Because we need you to do it for the least of the people. The scripture says that Jesus said, if you haven't done it for the least of my people, you have not done it for me. I need to know, are you going to go? Lord, they won't let me work. I need to know, are you going to go out into the street with the masses of the people where we need you? And so our people need to know, just like Rochelle Bilal, she didn't have money. She didn't have a network. The machine went against her. Even Black women organizations that she supported told her they didn't think she, and therefore they would not support her. And now that she has won, now they're scratching at the door. And she's still being gracious because she's advancing women up through the ranks where they never had opportunity before. So we have so much power. If you don't like the police in your community, don't worry about controlling the police. Control the people who control the police, like the elected officials, like the city budget. So run for office. Stop whining and complaining. Get out on the ground and do some work. Every one of us represents 10 votes. So you get 10 of your friends together, that's 100 votes. Start out, if you want to start small, become I can't think of it now, but it's the civic leader, right? And then you get on the committee, the local committee. They usually win by 10, 15, 20, 30 votes. And you start working your way up and building your force of young people, if you will, to take over some of these institutions. They're ready for the taking. We just don't know it.
That sounds like a great Faulkner initiative.
On them all the time, every time. Don't allow them to be comfortable. I tell my community just about Black cops. I live in the hood. They sell drugs on every corner except the 4 where I own a home and the other 4 where my parents have a home. And I say to them, brothers, y'all can't sell here. You don't live here, you can't sell here. I'm just asking you, give me these 4. I walk 3 miles every day. I wave at them, they wave at me. They saw me one day walking to the local hospital because I was doing a lecture for the board of directors. They said, where you going, sir? I said, I'm going to do a lecture to talk about George Floyd and racism and race in the institutions. They're like, if you need us, you call us because we down, right? I have a relationship in the community. Now, they're not going to sell in front of me, and I'm not going to watch them sell, but I'm also not going to watch cops beat them and put stuff on them. The community has got to engage the system. Now, if you just don't like the system, the community, then leave. But if you're going to be here, be actively involved in this community. Decide that you're going to run something. If you can't run somebody. If you can't vote, then make sure you let other people vote. If you can't vote, you can put flyers on the street. You can take people to the polls. You can run candidates out. Identify the weak candidate and target them to take them out of office because they're not addressing your needs. We need to make sure that we understand we have no permanent friends and no permanent enemies. We have permanent interests. So we need to vote our interests, and we need to put people in play who represent our interests.
So let me ask you, I know you're in Newark, but you're just right over the bridge from New York, and some of the shenanigans that are going on over there in terms of the commissioner, Dermot McShay or Shea, whatever his name is, talked about, their version, I guess, of kind of defunding and reallocating, getting rid of their, the emergency response team or the jump out boys, whoever they are. You know that group I'm talking about, 600 officers that somehow moving them into uniform is going to magically make things all better.
Yeah, I think that what we're seeing, and that's why you see the surge in homicides and shootings across the country in urban communities, including mine here in Newark, all of a sudden. I think that we call that in the police world, because I was a union rep, we call it upward discipline. So when the community marches against the police department, the police get angry, their feelings get hurt, and what they say is, we're just not going to police at all. And so we'll let you have at it, and we unleash the Krakens. And that's what I think he's doing by shifting the units so that they can unleash the Krakens. And so what I question and challenge all the time is their commitment to the community. That's why I believe the police should have to live in the community, because then you won't be unleashing Krakens, because your children are in the same damn community, and so are your loved ones. And so you now have a vested interest. Dr. Adelaide Sanford, who's an elder in her 80s, used to say to me when I was preparing to run the school, she says, whenever self as an interest competes with any other interest, always
This is where I really disagree, and I gotta speak on it.
When you're not invested in the community, then the only thing you're invested in is in yourself. And so you're going to protect your self-interest, and we need to make it worthwhile for you to understand that if you're not invested in this.
Number one, this is the problem, even though I live in the city. When I had to deal with an emergency like I have, both of my parents used to live in the city till my father moved out the city to Baltimore County. My son goes to a city school. My mother lives in the city. Majority of my best friends live in the city. Okay?
Yeah.
Even if you're a great cop, you are always going to be targeted. Now, I'm not saying that's for every cop. But yet, you could be making a lawful arrest, doing everything by the book, everything great. And because some asshole didn't like you, because you were the one who told him stop, or when I said earlier, it's a decision against authority, they can target you. Now, it's funny how you're supposed to have a vested interest, but a lot of these cities don't give you that vested interest. Do I get benefits off of my rent, mortgage, or anything like that? But yet, when you have those vested interests, you tend to look at it like, why do I want to keep dealing with a city and its shenanigans and its bullshit, and if I work in it all the time? Yes, in law enforcement, you do need a break. A lot of us do need to move outside the cities or places where we work, because that's a stress bringer. And it's not even, oh, you're afraid because you might have done something dirty. No, it's the fact of the matter is, as a police officer, do you really want to look over your shoulder all the goddamn time? We have a fucking sergeant who was minding his business, washing his car, and two jackasses tried to rob him and shot him.
Oh, wow.
See, I'm one of those guys who tell both sides of the story. The ugly side of the story. A lot of people don't see that. When you have a city, see, it would be great to live in the city for all the cops to live there. If I was the mayor, I would do everything in my power to get as many police to live and firefighters to live there. But when you don't even allow the police to be police, that's one thing. We're not talking about, kicking ass and taking names. We're talking about police. And to quote about him about, well, they let them out and they let them release the Krakens. No, It's the fact of the matter nowadays. This is how it is for most police in America today. There's a heavy penalty to pay if people second guessed you. Not if you did anything wrong, but if people second guessed you. Who wants to go out there, crack down crime, crack down drugs, and you have a state's attorney who says, I'm not prosecuting anything for weed, which is one of the dumbest things you could say. Because when you actually have officers doing their jobs and cracking down on marijuana and things of that nature, and we're not talking about, because in Baltimore City, anything under 10 grams is a citation. It's not an arrestable offense anymore. So if you see a guy who has like 12 pounds of weed, nah, this isn't personal use, buddy. And because these cops did everything by the book, and the state's attorney earlier that week said, I'm not arresting anybody for marijuana, they had to throw the case out.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people create the police atmosphere they want. How many people want to risk their career, their houses, trying to do their job? And we're not talking about crooked cops. We're talking about good, sworn police who are like hands off. Because you got a state's attorney who's hell bent on prosecuting cops to build her career. See, a lot of times you get suspended nowadays. Even there are talks about police chiefs trying to get away with the law enforcement bill of rights.
Mm.
So you're saying some fool can make up a story about you, and depending on the contents of the story, you could be suspended without pay for over a year, and then come to find out everything was untrue. So you're gonna get a hands-off police department. That's not because, oh, we're trying to be vindictive. It's because, oh, is me arresting that guy who's committing a crime worth getting a complaint and losing my career? Because nobody's going to back you up. Nobody's going to say, hey, that officer was doing everything by the book. It's not worth it for a lot of cops. That's how they look at it. Continue.
Okay. Make a team to play.
Community, then you can't draw $100,000, $200,000 salary out of this community and take it somewhere off into a suburb.
Right.
Why
right.
not? That's
So
called
listen,
pocket watching. Why not?
Lots of about no-knock warrants. I know someone had mentioned something earlier, and I think they want to hear a little bit about what you think about no-knock warrants. And we're waiting mightily to see if some of these prosecutors, in the case of Breonna Taylor and others, I'm near and dear to my heart, a young man in Connecticut, Mubarak Sullivan. I don't know if you know his story, but waiting for the Attorney General, Michael Gayler in Connecticut, to make a decision about whether or not the officers are going to be prosecuted over there. So when you have situations like the no-knock, and we know that there's no reason for no-knock. It doesn't make any sense. It didn't then. It doesn't now. And why are police departments, prosecutors so ambivalent about bringing these officers to heel who engage in these kinds of atrocities in our community? What's up with that in your mind?
So let me say this. I think it's interesting. The question that I ask, and of course, obviously, as a researcher now, I'm looking at the world very differently, right? How many no-knock warrants do we execute in suburban white communities versus everywhere else, right? So let's look at the comparative. And what's the purpose of the no-knock? Generally, you want the element of surprise, because you believe that if you don't have the element of surprise, then they're going to destroy evidence and or escape. So when we're going in with a warrant, you usually have the perimeter surrounded anyway, so they're not getting out. So there's and if you're talking about not a primary residence, but a secondary or tertiary residence where you think something's being stashed, and none of that was found in the case of Breonna Taylor, right? What's the purpose of it? But not only that, what did you write in the warrant? What did you write in the request to get the judge to approve it to begin with? So I think that in this age that we're in, we can't trust the police at face value. And that's the problem. There used to be, as you know, you could take the testimony from an officer based on information and belief. That no longer is the case. And so that was what I think also of the no-knock warrant in this day and age, that we can't trust the information upon which it's being based. And therefore, there's got to be the balance struck between law enforcement, whatever that means, and also protecting the safety and well-being of the community that they're charged with in terms of public safety.
Right. And so what do we do for these families who are struggling mightily in this area? And I often advocate for others to, get involved, get engaged, speak up on their behalf, because they're just one person going against this machine, right? Aside from protesting, what do you do? How do we not change channels, right? Because it's so easy to do.
So Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael, one of his last lectures I got to see as the young person in Newark, and he says that every Black person should belong to an organization. And if it's a weak organization, make it stronger. And if you can't make it stronger, then leave it and start your own. But we must start our own organization. He says, and then after we start the organization, we must ask the question about Africa. We're disconnected from who we really are as a people. And so we find ourselves lost here trying to fit into an environment that doesn't accept us. We've got to organize, we've got to mobilize, and then we have to politicize. So we have to create movements in our community on behalf of our community. You're right. I was fortunate. I was an officer that spoke up, spoke out, and when they came for me, the community had my back. And that's the only difference between me, you, and some others who've tried it and have been crushed under the pressure, because as you know, they bring the entire force down upon you. The community has got to pick its levels of how we're going to respond. Not everybody's going to be in the street protesting. I work with a group called MomSAD, Mothers of Murdered Sons and Daughters. These are mothers whose children have been killed by the police and other people and other children. So I've been doing that some 20 plus years. That's also where some work has to be done. One of my colleagues, the Reverend Dr. Nicole Simpson, who just got her doctorate, has been doing 16 years in the prison here, all women's prison. Where now correction officers are being prosecuted for raping them and taking advantage of them, impregnating them, and forcing them to have to trade sex for favors for things that they should have gotten naturally. So, I mean, there's all sorts of levels and layers that we haven't even dealt with yet. But our community collectively needs to work collaboratively to protect those who are vulnerable. So when you talk about families that are struggling and don't know what to do, there are a bunch of us, in the book, Crisis Action Plan, Black Cops Against Police Brutality, a Crisis Action Plan, I have 2 books. We talk about having a council of elders, as Malik Jones's mother, who was an attorney whose son was killed in 1998, April 14, at the corner of Grand and Murphy at 6 p.m. in New Haven, Connecticut. Drove up with the team and we drove up to support her for 4 years. We would drive 3 hours there and 3 hours back for 4 years. And it is that level of commitment and organizing and mobilizing and political. It took us a long time, but we finally got civilian oversight. And so we've got to decide where we want to plant our bucket and build from there as a collective around families that may not be able to do it themselves, but we can do it with them and help them.
When I look at civilian oversight, the thing that, rubs me raw is that it doesn't seem to have any real teeth. Right here in LA, we have the Los Angeles Police Commission. And we just, our private commission can make recommendations. Right. And they've made recommendations very rarely where they go against the police chief. But in this particular instance, it was the shooting of a mentally ill young man by the name of Ezell Ford. They found the shooting out of policy, and then Police Chief Charlie Beck said, "Thank you." And then he went up to the roof of the administration building and made a video to all of the troops saying, "I got you." And so while having a independent civilian review board is certainly helpful. I believe that's the reason that Daniel Pantaleo was ultimately fired, because he was ineffective. He was ineffective because he lied, not because he choked Eric Garner, be clear. But most boards make recommendations.
Some do. However, again, but here we go again. We're talking about communities organizing. What can we do, right? You can decide that you're going to have a council that says, like we have in Newark, which is why they've been in court with the union for the last year plus, because we have a mayor who we organize with who says we want to have subpoena power. We don't want to make recommendations. We want to be able to make decisions. We want to have investigative powers, and we also want to make sure that we have a percentage of the police department's budget, period. And so when you put your candidate in, you also have some demand.
See, this is the problem with civilian review boards, okay? You're asking people who've never been police, never been military, and a lot of these people, you're going to have to send them to a 8-week, 2-month, 3-month short academy to experience what the police go through. Like Chaos, if you work in retail, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you like your manager to be someone who never worked in retail before to tell you how to do your job?
No.
So you're going to have civilian review who have to go through some type of training, meaning they're going to have to go through weeks. They're going to have to pull a trigger. They're going to have to go through scenarios with admonitions, and they're going to have to reasonably understand what that officer is going to go through. And the problem with this is a lot of people want to just be up on civilian review boards and say, oh, get rid of that officer, instead of actually taking the time to investigate. Like he said, you're an investigator, so you're going to have to take the time to actually investigate. So it's kind of hard. That's why I always said it's very hard for the protector to take the advice of the protected. Now, if they will actually go through a 2 to 3 month training course where they have to go through different scenarios, then that's something else. Because they would actually have to go on several ride-alongs. They're going to have to go through some type of training. They're going to have to go through scenarios where they play the officers, and they're going to be in the scenarios where they judge.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just get lottie-dottie and every fucking body doing it. Because what if you get people who just have an axe to grind against police? Is that fair? No. See, the crazy thing about fairness is that you have a lot of people who just don't want to be fair.
Yeah.
You got to take your bias and flush it down the toilet. And unfortunately for a lot of these officers and these civilians, this is where the disconnect comes.
Mm-hmm.
And when he said, what kind of change you see is political, that's partially true, but partially not. Because guess what? No matter how many politicians you get in office, you still have to deal with that officer who's right in front of you. This is the reason why Cerulean Gray and myself came up with this initiative. Came up with ideas of what to do with young black boys who are the most at risk. This is the shit that actually gets me and hits me square in the face. How many of you are willing to sit down and actually have a conversation and actually speak about this, to actually come up with live solutions? How many years do we have? Hell, we still have a school to prison pipeline. Where's your school to military pipeline? Why haven't you boosted more funds to ROTC? More scholarships? Why haven't you taken the Police Explorers program with more scholarships? What is the problem of grooming your black boys to be your police and your police supervisors and your police chiefs and police executives and police commissioners? Your next deputies and sheriffs, your next FBI agents. You never hear that, do you, Chaos?
Nope.
You never hear of grooming your next police. See, everybody wants to tiptoe around policing. And I'm going to read a little bit more before we continue of the Gray Faulkner Initiative, the law enforcement section. And please download the Gray Faulkner Initiative. It's right here. Thank you once again, Simply Unique. Conversely, to become a police officer does not require a long legislative process, only that the person be qualified. See, you don't have to go through politics, okay? The minimum requirement is a high school diploma, as long as the applicant does not have any of the following: felony convictions, serious misdemeanors, current drug use or past drug use, dishonorable discharge from the military, service, bad credit history, not always an impedance, history of domestic violence, clean driving record, not always an impedance, unreported past crimes, past or current gang affiliations, poor employment record, not always an impedance, incorrect or false or incomplete information given on the application. Most black males qualify to be law enforcement. However, because of this impedance of perception stemming from the us versus them mentality, many black American males are advised to make the attempt to become one. Adverse. Furthermore, because there are too few black American law enforcement officers in the field of law enforcement, continues to be viewed in the black American community as adversarial. To change this perception, there is no better way than to encourage more black American males to become police officers. At one time, did you hear it yet in this conversation?
To get more black people in the police. You've been saying that with the Gray Faulkner Initiative.
Exactly. Did you hear it during this conversation by these two?
Yep.
You know, a lot of people avoid saying that. There has been efforts to improve relations between the police and black American communities. However, they are received as shallow and false attempts to pacify the black American community, usually following negative media exposure at the police have committed a major transgression. To fix this impedance, it is incumbent upon black American males to become police officers and begin serving their own communities. This increased police/community relations in various ways. Damn, pages stick together. Y'all ready? Gonna go through these quick 5 facts. Number 1, black American law enforcement officers who live in or from the communities they serve decrease tensions between the community and police because black American community has officers in the community they can relate towards. Number 2, this process inspires young black American males in a way that no other process can. Many black American males don't realize they have the opportunity to be law enforcement and serve their communities. This is wholly due to this adversarial perception of us versus them mentality, which both the community and the police often suffer from. Conversely, to use an example of this process is to take from the story of an article written by Pam Cragen of the San Diego Union Tribune.
That's Charles. I was
listening to the radio for a minute. On August 18, 2019, of the Montford Point Marine Robert L. Moore, he recalls a story from his childhood about what inspired him to become a Marine. He recounts seeing 2 black American Marines in uniform walking down the street and realized that he too could become a Marine. as well. That image is firmly seated in his young teenage mind until he reached the age where he was old enough to join the Marines. This process is just that simple. Number 3, the inspiration young black males receive seeing officers who look like them, whom also live in their communities or come from their communities and serve their communities, expose them to potential opportunities in law enforcement while serving as an incentive to serve themselves, which has consequential effort to avoid the impedance that would disqualify them from becoming officers, just as it was the case with the esteemed Marine. You gotta love Cerulean with that esteem. Make you feel proud to be a black man, doesn't it, when he call you esteemed?
Hell yeah.
In the case of the esteemed Marine Robert L. Moore. Number 4, becoming an officer has its own incentive. In fact, the benefits are similar to the provisions offered by the military. Hell yeah. When he talked about making $100,000 to $200,000, yes, I don't believe in pocket watching. If that man makes it legally, he can keep it. He became, because guess what? A lot of us have an issue about the black medium income for black males is only about what, 40, 35 to $40,000 a year. Remember, 64% of black men are in the middle class. Why not increase it? This is number 5. This is an impedance that can be solved by local mayors, city council members, judges, district, city, state attorneys, and governors. Where's the push for that? Number 6, probably the biggest one of them all. Well, it's damn sure the biggest paragraph as well. This method can reduce mass incarceration. What? What is one of the biggest issues in the black community? What? What? Once again, this method can reduce mass incarceration. This method can reduce mass incarceration. Even by a small margin, this method is still worth great consideration. Black American youth are the most negatively affected because a majority of the officers that black American communities are often not from these communities. B, because those officers are not from these communities, they have a tendency to treat blacks within those communities with explicit bias unchecked. In order to check that bias, there must be more black American law enforcement officers. There has been a sentiment that states these questions. If there are good cops, why aren't they coming forward and talking about the initiative to check the bad ones? Why aren't black cops doing anything to come out against white officers who abuse their state-granted authority against black people? The answer to both questions should be clear. It requires a change in the current policing culture. This push can only come from the people of the community these officers serve. The culture is adversarial, and a good cop coming forward can mean a cop's career if said good cop is unsure about just how many bad cops are within the department. Wow. With black officers, it's a matter of numbers, and this too requires a push from the community as well. So tell me, how many times have we spoken about real change?
You've been speaking now for the last 2 years before it became actual paperback or PDF 2019.
So, how many times have you heard myself and the Professor Cerulean Gray speak on this? There is no way out of the mud except climbing out your damn self.
Yep.
You have to take the initiative. You can't, mama. Cut the umbilical cord. Your boys need to be men. Daddy, you need to groom those boys, excuse me, to be men. Continue the video. So, I mean,
All right.
KL?
Yep. Let me find my mics. Is it playing? Oh shit! Hold on.
Like, no one gives away power. I need to be real clear about that. They don't just say, okay, here you go, you got me. No, it
How
has
many
to be,
times have I said that?
you know,
Enough time.
this is a struggle for liberation for our people. And I think we've romanticized this thing. We've read about the Black Panther Party. Well, let's be very clear. If the Black Panther Party was as bad as people say, then the government would not have taken all their programs, co-opted them, and now called them, what is it? Head Start program. We're feeding kids early in the morning. The Black Panther Party was doing that before it was a federal program. The Panthers were doing it. And J. Edgar Hoover knew it. He says, we've got to stop them at all costs, because they understood that if we feed your children and we talk about educating you when you come to meet with us, well, then we can build a relationship with you, because that's natural to what we do. What's happening is that we want a quick fix, and you can't have a quick fix to something that has been going on as a system for 400 years.
You know, when I think about this whole notion of defunding the police, I was on a call today with LAPD folks in terms of recruitment. My police chief says that he wants to increase the number of blacks, and particularly women, on the Los Angeles Police Department by a number that I think is not really doable given what's going on right now and the mindset of folks, right? The whole FTP crowd, right? But I think in listening to them talk here, and I can't help but wonder if this isn't going to be a problem across the nation, that the young people think defunding the police means less police on the street. And you have already alluded to why we need them, because of Peaches and Ray Ray, right? We need them. But also what's happened here on the LAPD is they've lost a lot of money that would have gone to recruitment. And I think, again, having us on the department is key. And so now, according to the people in the personnel division on the LAPD, they were planning on recruiting, and I was making notes as we were speaking today, I think 250 people, and that ain't a whole lot, but now they're down to half of that. And so some of that money was recruitment, and some of it was, marketing and all of that has to do with recruitment and how do you create opportunities to deal with attrition, because we know that that's a real thing. Like you said, women have issues when it comes to firearms training and strength, lacking the strength to get through the physical rigors of a police academy. And so I wonder if when these young people are asking departments to defund the police department, if when mayors like mine and others say, okay, we'll take here $150 million and we'll move it, that they understand the ill effect, if you will, that it actually does more to harm our community, right, than help our community. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I do understand what you're saying. I think that it depends on your vantage point. And so the paradigm shifts for us, those of us that got a little more seasoning, because we understand the impact. But from a young person's vantage point, at least my understanding is, if I see you as a harm to me, I don't give a damn what you lose, because you're not of value to me anyway, recruiting or not. So there's research that suggests until police departments have 35 to 45% representation of black police officers will not stand up for the community, because they don't believe that they have the support to stand in the midst of that and challenge and advocate on behalf of the community. That's just one study that I'm citing. I think that what also needs to happen is that Guardian Civic League, which is a black police organization down in Philly, where Rochelle Blau was the president for about 18 years, they would go into the community and prepare the community for the test, right? As well as making sure that they prepared officers for the promotional exam. And they did that as long as I've known them, and I do training for them. So I know that they've consistently done that to get their numbers up. Additionally, Eric Adams with the Grand Council of Guardians, that was something they used to do. Eric is now an elected official, the Brooklyn Borough President, I believe, in New York, or Manhattan Borough President. But he was a captain when he left NYPD. And as you know, our brother Vernon Wells, the sergeant, that was their group. They would go out and educate and train the community. So when we were doing it in East Orange, I had the cadet program. And so I was training my young officers, my young people coming through the police athletic league, getting them ready. Then they would join the cadet program, then the auxiliary police force, and then preparing them for the test. And so there are several that we brought up to the ranks. And some of the people that I brought up with the rookies when I brought them in are now lieutenants. We're looking to get a black female captain. She just got promoted to lieutenant, and now we have her studying for the captain's test. So what I'm saying and suggesting is that even when police departments have these budgets, are they actually helping to do those things that the black police organizations knew we had to do to get more black officers on the force? Right? They're not going to just come join because you advertise. And when you're advertising, where are you spending those dollars? So are you turning around and taking tens of thousands of dollars and spending them with the white media, or are you spending them with black and brown media that's going to actually impact our community?
You know, let me ask you about police associations, because I know that there are nationals, and I know that I think you were a part of it, right? What is it, NABP?
National Black Police Association.
And so I have a little angst about, you know, here we have the Oscar Joe Bryan Association, and I know that I've heard that they weren't really very involved in that national organization, and I just personally, you know, I'm a little jaded, and I think, you know, you almost have to go along to get along to be on those in the first place, and then once you get on, you don't want to ruffle no feathers. How do we encourage those associations to have the same kind of gumption, temerity, to speak the way these benevolent police officer associations do?
So let me just say this. I don't think that you can grow testicles after you've grown up, right? So, so at the end of the day, I think that the black police officers, many of the black police organizations have been neutered. Period. And that's what I think. For a lot of different reasons. I mean, I'm being a little flippant, but I do mean that. I've been a member of the National Black Police Association since 1986, and I have a life membership. I think they'd love to rescind it, but I have a life, the Century Club membership that the elders in front of me taught me the importance of being a member. It's almost like what you're saying about in the police department making change. It is the same thing in the black police organizations making change. You must be in it to win it on some level. Now, as we did with in Cleo J, National Coalition of Law Enforcement Officers for Justice, Reform, and Accountability, when these organizations no longer meet your need, or you don't believe that they're looking to change, then you have to start your own. When people ask me for the last 4 or 5 years, I know you said the last year, but it's been about 3 years now, sister. You just missing some time clocks, right? Because that's how long ago we all came together. I think 15 or 16 we came together. But I say to people, well, do you see Sergeant Shelton Dorsey on CNN? Yes. Have you seen Reddick Hudson on MSNBC? Yes. Then you've heard DeLacy, because I'm behind the scenes. We don't all have to be out front. And that's also part and parcel to the problem. We need to learn how to leverage our relationships and build coalitions. We need some allies, but we need to build coalitions to get this work done. Rochelle Bilal was added 18 years. I met her in 1997. And it was Chuck Taylor, who was from another black police organization, at a conference who said, I want to introduce you to the female version of you. She's as strong as you, she's as loud as you, and she's on point and loves the community. Now, you are also a part of that female version of me, right? We're counterparts. And I think that we are playing ourselves thin if we don't realize the power that we really have. We don't have to be as loud as the unions. We have to be more effective than the unions. And what we have that they don't have is we come from these communities. We're from the community. And what I tell cops, because see, what you're saying makes sense to me, but I recognize that many of us are punks. We were punks before we became cops, on the black officers on the force. We know we're punks. In fact, when we go home, our family members know we're punks, right? So what happens is I'm not trying to make you become a black man or a black woman. I'm asking you to give us your money. Okay? Give us your money. We'll fight for you, right? When you were the punk, you gave your money to the bully. He protected you. Now we're saying to you, we want to stand up for what's right for our community. Give us your money. And that's what happens. And that's what we've got to do. We want to do more than have parties. We want to do more than socialize. And when we go to a conference like you and I have given right here at least 25 solutions on this telecast. Now, they could pick any one or all of them, but we didn't come and just have a feel-good session.
Right.
Stop it.
I talked to Reddit about this the other day because, we were all together in D.C. meeting with Sheila Jackson.
Pause it.
All of this back then.
See, this is where I have a concern, right?
Mhm.
You still there, Chaos?
I'm here.
So many women will come up to me. So many sisters will say, why don't these black men have jobs? They're so concerned. And you heard the sergeant, a retired sergeant, Cheryl Dorsey. I think she's a cool person. I like the doctor as well, Dr. Davis. But see, this is the reason why your black men are not giving jobs, because y'all more interested in giving the jobs to the sisters than the brothers who need them the most.
Oh yeah.
You're more concerned about wondering why females cannot pass the PT test and pull the charging handle back on pull the slide back on the handgun. Maybe it wasn't meant for them to do it. Nobody wants to say that. Do you have females who are capable of doing it? Yes. But if you want to build a community, the men are going to have to get the jobs first. Nothing against the sisters. If the sisters can get the jobs on their own, good for them. But when you're looking at who's more at risk, it's the guys. So you're telling me men shouldn't protect the community? Isn't that why the Creator built men in the first place? To be the protectors?
Well, they say that black men have not created or do nothing. They're not seeing it from a few black women. They sure as hell demonize black men.
Yeah, right? If you give these jobs to the black men who are already checked the boxes of being physically fit, able to learn, and can do all of this, they want to give it to the sisters no matter what. But then they come around and give these jobs to the sisters and then wonder why you don't have any men on your level. Because you exempted them when it came to giving them those jobs. It's like the Kevin Samuels thing. You complain about men, not enough black men being on your level, but are you willing to give up your job for the black man to take care of you? Oh, because you weren't taught that. You were taught to get everything, your education, your career, so you don't have to depend on him.
Mm-hmm.
But Becky, Consuela, and Meng Ling will willingly step back and give that man that job and let him take the lead.
Matter of fact, some will go as far as recruit some men or a bunch of men because they don't want to.
Exactly. But yet, I just read the law enforcement part of the section of the Great Faulkner Initiative. And it says the black boys should be those men to protect the community. Why not give the creature that's designed for protecting the protection job, the protection career? Because it's so funny because people don't even, and I understand what BGS Itmore says now. I hate it when very intelligent people say some disingenuous shit. But then you hear them talk about the Pookies and Ray Rays. You heard them say it. Or the Pookies and whatever, Patricias, I guess. But yet, how many people live right by the Pookies and Patricias and the Pookies and Ray Rays? But when you only see Pookies and Ray Rays in the community, what do you think the boys are going to want to be raised to be?
A Ray Ray.
But yet, You're going to try to get this initiative off, not the Great Faulkner Initiative, but the initiative to push this feminist, this black feminist agenda that, oh, we're strong and beautiful. But once again, when shit gets real and the G.I. Jane wet dream runs off and you're in a dangerous situation and you cannot defend yourself because you don't have the training or the strength or the ability to manually, affect that weapon, it gets real.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? Why can't they do like other female police officers and work out prior to actually applying for the department? Why would you apply for something that you're not physically able to do yet?
Mm-hmm.
How many brothers out there who are looking for good careers, but you're putting an initiative to get more black women in particular, on your departments? I have nothing against sisters being police or military. But at the same time, when are we going to put the black boys first and get the most at risk out the way first? That is military strategy 101. Continue.
All right, yeah, I want to be able to finish this, Charles, because it's getting late. So let me finish this.
Yes.
And we're still having this conversation. It's so funny to me, and Reddit may not say it, but I'm going to say it, because he was in her presence, and she was like, oh, I would love to hear more about that. And he was like, ma'am, we were in your office, got pictures to prove it, talking about this very issue. You feigned to have us back to hear more and say more and presumably do more, yet here we are. And so it's very frustrating because I feel like from our black leadership that we're getting lip service. It sounds good, it's sexy, it sometimes even feels good. But at the end of the day, how are we here today having this same conversation when everyone was outraged and had had enough, allegedly, in July of 2014 when Eric Garner was first murdered, and then 2 weeks later, Mike Brown, and 2 weeks after that, Ezell Ford here in Los Angeles, and then don't get me rattling off names. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed.
Well, I think that we have short memories, and elected officials know that. And so police brutality, up until recently, police brutality has not registered high when our communities have been surveyed in terms of what they're concerned about. So elected officials know that also. So they know that if they just simply roll with it for a little bit, and as Dr. Tyrone Powers, one of our brothers out of Baltimore, Maryland, who's an FBI agent, state trooper, and my colleague, says all the time, when he worked in the behavioral unit of the FBI, they studied black people and black people's protests. And so they knew that black people only needed about 3 good days to get protested out. If they're going to yell, they're going to scream, and then about the 3rd day, they're done. In fact, I tell communities that I work with, I said, listen, you can't kill Hassan, Pookie, Peaches, or Ray Ray in the wintertime, and you don't want to kill them in the rain because ain't nobody coming out, right? We need them to get killed when it's a sunny day. And I'm being facetious, but that's how we behave because of our level of disinterest or our lack of commitment to whatever it is we believe in. And so at the end of the day, the elected officials they're playing the stats. So if the numbers say that police brutality is number 4 in priorities to those people who vote, then they're going to give us lip service, and we're going to keep revisiting this discussion, which is why I'm talking about us building institutions that address the needs of our community and some of the underlying concerns and needs that we have to address. Because again, if we're organizing, guess what? They're going to have to listen. The unions are organized. That's why I specifically talked about making it taboo to accept union money, because the unions are a 501c4, which allows them to donate money. And what we need to say to elected officials that are ignoring our cries, ignoring us being murdered in the street at the hands of killer cops, is if you take their money, you can't have our vote. There's got to be a hammer. Right? We just can't make demands and think because we demanded something, the person's going to respond. As Alton Maddox, the attorney at war, used to say in New York, there must be an or else. But what's the or else? The or else says if you take union money, which we know goes against the interests of black, brown, poor people, and fragile and marginalized communities, you will not get our vote. I don't care what you look like. And they could put Mickey Mouse in office. I'd rather deal with Mickey Mouse and come up with a mousetrap than to deal with you when you look me dead in the face and lie.
Do you think that's something that would take legislation to actually really stop, or do you think it would just be the power of the vote?
You can't legislate behavior. How do you un-racist a racist?
Yes, you can.
Brain it, right? So while Jane Elliott, who I like, a social scientist, says that you can actually train the brain, but you got to first want to hear it. Right, you a police officer, you know what training is like. So there's some mandatory training you have to do too. You go to firearms training, and now they throw domestic violence in there. They throw in this training, that training, all of that in the firearms training that you don't want to be at anyway. Right. And you take it, you leave it, and you don't even clean the gun again until the next.
Right. Everybody's going la 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 la.
Right. So there's got to be political will to get the job done. Here's the other side of that coin. Why don't we shoot unarmed white kids? They commit crimes at about the same rate. We don't shoot them. In fact, when they're white people with guns, we talk them down. And Dylan Roof, we took him to get McDonald's or Burger King. He killed 9 people in the church. And they put him in the back of the car and said, would you like a burger? Right? That's the reality. So we've got to be clear that this isn't hard science. This is about, one time I listened to a minister say, what do you do with your former slaves' children when you don't want them and have any use for them anymore? You kill them, and those that you don't kill, you let them kill themselves. That's where we are. We're in that place and space. So I don't care what legislation they come up with. Do they need it? Yeah, I want you to legislate whatever you want to legislate. The reality is there's no legislation that says black cops don't shoot at white people. There's no legislation that says black cops don't shoot at Joey running down the street with a candy bar, a cigarette, a box, a bag of this. I thought he had a gun. And when Muhammad Noor in Minneapolis, Minnesota, thought that he could get away with that same line and shot that white woman from Europe, they gave him 12 and a half years, and they gave her family $20 million quickly. So we know that they know what to do. It's a matter of who they want to enforce laws against and who they want to give a pass to.
Right. Well, listen, what now? What now?
I think that we continue to organize. I think that there's another conversation that happens in our community that has nothing to do with the police, right? People often want to make this argument that, well, the police kill each other, kill us and you get angry, but when you kill yourselves, nobody's protesting. Those are not, they're not arguments that need to be made, because what I say to people is that the criminal didn't take an oath to protect and serve the people, the police did. So that's one conversation. But then there's a conversation that we have to have in our community about how do we organize it.
Oh, the cop-out.
Community so that we can protect the women, the children, the elders. For example, just with the coronavirus, we're going to have a generation of children that missed an entire year of school, period. That has an impact. We have to prepare for that impact. There's some psychological impacts that are going to happen. People are going to be depressed and anxious, right? That impacts our community no matter what's going on with the police. So how are we organizing around addressing some of those concerns? They will affect us. We've got to talk about how do people eat. While 40 million people were unemployed, there's still 33 million people that are getting some kind of assistance, which is subsistence, because 30 million people have also said that they didn't have enough to eat. And so our community is struggling, but we do have the resources that we have to pull together. We must decide at multiple levels, right? We talked about the federal level, the state level, local level. You and I and all of us in our group, we're connected across the country, right? You get an opportunity and we're all excited and ecstatic, right? We're not looking at you talking about, well, why not me? Right? And so we've got to model the behavior that we want people to follow, and we've got to do some concrete things where we are and around the country to protect our community, because other people are doing it. They're preppers. I happen to be a prepper, right? So people are like, what is that? Well, we prepare for days like this, right? We had a storm here on the East Coast. I've got friends that are without power still, but most of them are not prepared to go more than 24 hours without power. I was here for Storm Sandy. I went 6 days in the house, 30 degrees in the house, and I stayed in the house because I was worried about Pookie and Peaches and them taking the pipes, since there wasn't no alarm system, there wasn't no cameras, and there wasn't no police. So I sent my
Because
family.
we learned about Pookie and Peaches when we're trying to get Pookie and Peaches jobs.
Prepare for this. More of this is going to occur. So regardless of what government chooses to do, we must begin to organize our churches, our mosques, masjid, temple, institutions, organizations, sororities, fraternities in a way that protects the village. That's what I think we need to do next.
So let me ask you a question. Chuck wants to know, what's your perspective on the role of the FOP with regards to reform or lack thereof?
What is my perspective relative to the FOP?
In regards to reform, do you think they're a hindrance?
Absolutely, they're a hindrance. They're 501c4. I think we're foolish people and naive little people if we think that an organization that is designed to protect its membership is not going to protect its membership. Period. We learn that from policing. You go to a house where you know there's a bad family in the house. You know that they got generations of criminal behavior and activity, and no matter what that person does, they protect them. Now, I'm not saying whether it's good or bad. What I am saying is that's what the police do also, right? They don't snitch either. So they can't be a part of the reform. They're part of the problem. They are part and parcel to the problem. And we are part and parcel in that we're not organizing in a similar fashion to do battle. The reason I wanted to go and get a doctorate, because I said, I'm sick and tired of the experts in the criminal justice field being white men and white women. Are you an expert on us?
Right.
How are you? Right? And so I can't just talk and whine about it. I need to go and study and come prepared. And not only did I need to study, but I need to come at the top of my game.
Right.
So I come out of there with a 3.9 GPA because it was important to me. People say, well, your GPA doesn't matter. I said, well, they didn't matter. Why they give awards for it? Right?
That part. Yeah. Well, listen, Dee, I so appreciate you coming on here with me, and we can yammer.
So we can understand
This
now.
another day, right?
As we always
Right.
But
do.
I wanna spend a little time letting the family know.
That it?
See, this is the issue that I always have with people. You want to talk about the crime and the killings that happen in the Black community, but you don't want to speak on the people who take an oath. Whether you take an oath or not, if you do something illegal, you're a criminal. Flat out. Flat out. You were without power for 6 days, but yet you didn't leave because you were scared of Pookie and Peaches stealing the pipes. Would Pookie and Peaches steal the pipes if they had the ability to get the jobs and the level of education and the benefits you benefited from when you retired from the police department? See, this is the reason why we're probably going to do a part 2. Because this is one of those subjects to me that's near and dear. And I like to point out things that everybody says. We know that Black boys are more at risk. Are white people shot by the police more? Yes, because they have raw numbers. There are more of them.
Yeah.
But ours is more publicized. Especially since we have a historical disconnect of policing in this country. Because we know that we're not getting a fair deal in the criminal justice system. And folks like myself, folks like Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, Dr. D. Lacey Davis, and myself, who either worked, still working, or retired from law enforcement as Black people, are trying our best to make things happen in the here and now and change it for the later. And it's funny how so many people still have this savior mentality when you are the savior of your community yourselves. You're going to have to start putting money into organizations. Once again, thank you again, Simply Unique, for putting this Gray Falker initiative. And there it is right there, PDF. You can print it out just like I did. Share it with your friends, email it, send it on Facebook Messenger. Get this message out. Not one damn time did somebody ever talk about the most at-risk people, which are black boys. Not one damn time. I'm not saying sisters can't join the department, but if you want the best men possible, give them the opportunities first and let those men save your department. It's not your department, the community.
Mm-hmm.
Let the men be the hero of not only their narrative, but the communities.
Mm-hmm.
Like, share, subscribe, everybody. We're coming back for part 2 tomorrow. Woo! And we're out.
Yes, take care, black people, and thank you again. Let the chaos reign.
Woo!